Good evening, all. I hope you can hear and see me. Can I just get any comments in the chat box to let me know if you can see me and hear me? Can I get any messages in the chat box if you can hear and see me? Fantastic. Now, there might be a little bit of a delay, and I hope there isn't much of one, but I have got my eyes and ears on the chat box to see how it goes. And you might be asking yourselves, how is this person still in the middle of daylight while he's on the phone or on a video call with us? And the answer to that is, well, I'm not in South Africa. I'm in the beautiful, picturesque mountains of Andalusia in Spain. So that's why I'm here, and it's still broad daylight for probably another hour and a half. So yeah, this is what summer in Spain is like. And I don't mean to make you feel too jealous. And the fact that we've got electricity all day, I really can't say how sorry I am that we can't share all of this with you right now. But you're all more than welcome to come and visit me here in Spain if you want to have some amazing sunshine and warmth all day. But yeah, so I'm just going to wait for a couple more people to join. I'm going to see how many people have joined so far. 45 people out of a potential 150, 200. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes to allow people to get on board. Some people might be starting their journey. If you have got any questions, please do let me know in the chat box, and we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. Hello, everyone. Hello. Brilliant. This is fantastic. I love it. What's the weather like in Cape Town today? Please do let me know. I hear winter's rapidly creeping in.
Steve at stevehughes.co.za.
Are you there? I just want to find out. I think something happened there. Yeah, I know you guys have got the mountain. On that side of the world, it gets dark very early. Absolutely. Yeah, I did notice there was a bit of a glitch there. If I do black out for a second, I will be able to see it because I get to see what the live stream is. So I will pause. I will make sure it gets back up, but don't worry. It will still be recorded. So yeah, it's because we are going all the way from Spain to you. So I do apologize for that. But while we're waiting for a few more people to join, I'm going to show you what it's like here in Spain. Now, so there's worse places to be in the world. And I'm still busy getting my Wi-Fi set up, but it's only coming tomorrow, so we're working off my mobile data. But I'll make sure that we can get through this as quickly as possible. If the signal dips or if it blacks out, just know that I will pause. You won't miss anything because I can see what's going on from my side. How many people we're probably going to kick off in about 1 minute's time. So if you are there ready, we can do it. All right, so I think we're gonna start now. So first of all, please allow me to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here today. It's a topic that isn't easy to talk about because it is quite horrific. There's things you're going to hear over the next hour that are going to leave you cold and very scared for the future of our children. But information is power, and it does give us the opportunity with the knowledge that I'm going to be sharing today for you to make informed decisions that are done through a constructive, positive connection with your children. Now, the nice thing is your children are still quite young, and a lot of parents of the junior children will ask me, but isn't this a topic really for the older children? And my answer is always no. It's not a discussion for the older children, because often the problems start from as young as 3 or 4. We're talking, of course, tonight about the problems and risks inherent with the internet and access that our children have to the digital world, and how those opportunities and those available resources are turning our children into criminals without them really knowing it, because they are pushed through peer pressure or through temptation or coerced through many different reasons into doing things which are dangerous for them and dangerous for you as parents. And we'll get into that over the course of the next while. But let me start by saying to you that children are not broken. It's not a hardware problem that has caused the issues that we're talking about tonight. It's a software upgrade. Now, we've all had an opportunity to open up a laptop. And I don't know if you've ever opened up a laptop in the middle of a meeting and you're about to start a video meeting or a presentation, and your Windows clicks in and says, this is a software upgrade, we'll be offline for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And it really throws a spanner in your works. When it comes down to children, especially when they start hitting adolescence, that happens for about 6, 7, 8, 9 years. So it's kind of like a software upgrade, but just know they become human beings that you'll want to have in your vicinity. But while they are going through these changes, a couple of things we forget as parents, because it's been a long time since we were children. And the first is that everybody goes through these changes. But when we were young, our risks were very different to the risks that our children face nowadays. And children from as young as 6 are at serious, serious danger. It's not just a case of them being changed by online digital access and the dopamine rewards and the addiction to those dopamine rewards that are so inherent with smart devices and the games and apps that our children are on almost 24/7. But the dangers that we faced were very in our face. You know, we had stranger danger. We were taught at a young age that if someone stopped and they wanted to offer you sweets, you don't get into a car. You don't talk to strangers because of fear of abduction. But we live in a world now where our children are actively engaging with strangers all the time on a platform that we've given them. We've given them access to smart devices, and through those devices, they're engaging, in some cases, actively seeking the connection with strangers because it gives them value, purpose, a sense of belonging. You know, the more fans or followers I've got, the more people who can connect with me, that's almost like a place of validation for young children. And that's not great, because through that, we're essentially exposing our children to a world of danger that we often don't know about. And I'll give you real case scenarios over the next couple of minutes. But let's find out why children are at risk, because there is no real guidebook on, and there's a lot of books that talk about it, but as parents, we're so bogged down in our daily lives, we often forget to research what goes on in our young children's lives. Now, for the first 7 years, a child has very little, if any, concept of their own identity. They don't realize the separation of identity from their parents and themselves. And that's why on the first day of school, it's as if nuclear fallout happened. You know, there's a great disconnect. And if the child parent, there's panic that sets in. From 7 until adolescence, children become a little bit more comfortable with being slightly separated from their parents. And in this, they are able to have sleepovers or have extramural activities after school, and the world doesn't fall apart quite as hard if their parents aren't there. But when it hits adolescence, and that happens from anywhere from 10 onwards nowadays, there is an active demand or desire to rip away their own identity, because subconsciously they realize they have to create and form their own identity. But because of the next phase of development I'm going to talk about, they don't realize that they don't have to burn bridges to be able to have their own identity. They can still maintain a connection, but it's weird. Biologically, children in their adolescent years are actively more connected to a stranger's voice even than their own mother's. So up until 10, 11, 12, a child naturally demands or is drawn to their own parent's voice. Whereas when adolescence kicks in, a stranger's voice has a stronger pull, a stronger connection. In fact, they are less wanting to hear their parents' voice and more wanting to hear the stranger's voice, which is weird because this real problem roots down to a biologic level. It's truly a almost evolutionary dynamic level where there's this need to pull away from our parents. And it's not easy for parents to go through that because they feel like they're losing their children. And it's not new to parents nowadays. It's happened since time began. That fear of loss of connection with their children. The next reason why children do silly things, and by simply messaging in the chat box, say one if you agree that there are times when your children do things where you just think, did you really switch your brain off for that moment? Or they say something and you just think, really? How did you string those sentences of words together and say them? Or how did you do this? Did you not think further than, anything? So just put a 1 in the chat box if it's happened to you, especially if you've got teenagers of your own. Is everybody there? Let's just check. Okay. So Andrew's saying 1, definitely. Janice, yes, absolutely. Great. Candace, wonderful. So I'm glad I'm not alone in sometimes thinking to myself, wow, kids sometimes act like they haven't switched their brain on. And the weird thing is, it's not a hardware problem, it is a software problem. When we develop as human beings, we develop from the back of our brain forward. So it goes right back to the almost lizard, that sort of primal hormonal model first, which we call the limbic system. And that is often associated with the heart, feelings, emotions, hormones, the flood of hormones and chemicals into our body for the first time in our lives makes us have feelings which are far more intense than anything we've ever experienced. And that's why a lot of times we look at our children and we think to ourselves, how are you so dramatic? How is everything so over the top? We have children come to us and it feels like to them that the world has ended. Like they can't even comprehend that there's so much feeling and emotion. And yet us as parents, we almost poo-poo it off. We brush it off going, it's not a big thing. Or don't listen to what they said. We almost don't listen because the drama for us is minute. We forget that the drama for our children is far greater because in their lifespan, that is as big a feeling as they might have felt, where for us, we've been through these things 100 times and we've got a bigger perspective on it. So the limbic system grows first. And that's why emotions are so important to teenagers or adolescents or young children, especially when they start to move in towards adolescence. They're flooded with hormones. And the first time anybody ever took a drink of alcohol, it had a much bigger impact on them than, for example, 20 years down the line. A glass of wine to a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old who snuck it from their parents' booze cabinet will have a much greater impact than, for example, a 50-year-old sitting around a braai. And hormones have the same effect on our body as an alcohol would. It impacts us greater because for the first time in our lives, we're feeling these feelings. And we don't just get sad, we get depressed. We don't just get upset, we get angry. And we don't just get attracted, we get horny. And that's why teenagers are this melting pot of emotions. And they don't have the capacity, the mental capacity, which grows much later on in their teenage years, to be able to balance things up as we as adults do. That's why when our children come to us and they're very dramatic, they're feeling it at level 100. And because we have what develops in later life, which we call the prefrontal cortex, which is cognitive or rational mind, that way we can weigh up balance of reality, of determining how much of a consequence it is. When something we experience as real or fantasy, we're able to make those decisions because of, in our head, a developed prefrontal cortex. But teenagers don't have that. That is why teenagers are 100% me now. If you're expecting them to think about tomorrow, forget it. If expecting a teenager to think about anybody other than themselves, forget about it. It doesn't happen. Not because the hardware is broken, but because the software is still developing. They're living in a limbic system world of here now. And they are driven by two major desires, one on each side of the spectrum. The first big motivator for teenagers is a desire to be noticed and accepted by people that they deem important. So they will, once they start to create their own identity, because of wanting to rip away from their parents and also having an understanding at a deeper level that there's safety in numbers, they realize they have to connect with their own new tribe. So they go and identify with people who have the same music or fashion or interest or TV sport or sports or whatever it might be. Want to connect with people that they feel are valuable. They go after those strangers that they can connect with that aren't associated with their parents. And in some cases, it's almost the exact opposite of their parents. That's why there's always a saying that the Germany's daughter is the most naughty kind of thing. If you're a very strong conservative, your children often grow up to be very liberal until they get through their puberty phase. But it's that desire for them to the recognition and acceptance of people they deem valuable. That's a phenomenally strong motivator that overrides almost everything else. But even stronger than that is the other end of the spectrum, an absolute abject fear of being rejected by their peers, by those people who they are trying to get the attention and recognition and acceptance of. So children are terrified to an extent where they sacrifice self-preservation out of fear of losing their standing among their peers. And this is why so many horrific things are happening to young children and teenagers that beggar belief. They're beyond comprehension. Case in point, a 15-year-old girl in Cape Town was on her phone during class, and the teacher saw this and confiscated the phone, went through it that night, which was wildly inappropriate and completely illegal, but he did it. And the next day called the girl in because he'd noticed there was naked pictures of her on the phone, and then coerced and blackmailed her into having sex with him. He basically said, I've seen those naked pictures. If you don't have sex with me, I'm going to show them to all of your friends. And that, because of him playing to her biggest fear is not getting in trouble with her parents. Her biggest fear is not being grounded or punished or whatever. Her biggest fear is having a reputation tarnished among the people who she deems to be those that she wants acceptance by. She capitulated. Now, would that teacher go to jail? Absolutely. Does it fix the problem of the child who now has self-loathing and is the victim of rape for the rest of her life? Absolutely not. And that's not a random case. That happens so often now that the figures are through the roof. A 14-year-old girl was approached by a 21-year-old boy saying, I've got topless pictures of you because they've been sent to me by someone who you'd sent them on to. She was the victim of revenge porn, which 40% of people know someone who is the victim of revenge porn. If you don't know what revenge porn is, put a 2 in the chat box right now. Well, in fact, I'll answer the question. Revenge porn is where you've sent pictures, naughty pictures onto someone, and that person chooses to then blast them out and make them go viral, send them on to somebody else. And 15 to 20% of all naked pictures who are received by someone are shown to a friend or friends. 15 to 20%. That's 1 in 5 people who receive a naked picture will show it to someone else. Now, the laws changed in South Africa last year in December that makes the showing of any image or video to someone else across any medium without the consent of the person in the images is a criminal act. And you can face years in jail and or 100,000 rand fine or 150,000 rand fine. So it is a serious problem. But the problem lies in the fact that more and more and more and more children, not just teenagers, are using their devices to engage in sexting. Now, in the olden days, when I was a kid, for me to be able to send a naked picture of my body to someone, I had to draw it. We didn't have access to phones. And even if we did have access to a camera, I didn't want to have to take the camera film down to the Pick and Pay for some 18-year-old working behind the counter to process the camera film. I didn't want that risk. So we didn't have that problem. If someone wanted to see your naked body, they saw it in real life. And thank God we didn't have social media back then, because we got away with so much stuff that we didn't do. But nowadays, and I've got to ask this question because I love getting the answers. Just out of interest, how young do you think children are when they start sexting? And sexting doesn't have to be a boyfriend and girlfriend situation. I'm talking about from what age have children started taking and sending naked pictures of themselves? Put it in the chat box. Just put your guesses, and I'll talk about this. And it's a very, very important thing, especially talking to junior school parents. So get some answers in the chat box. What age do you think children are starting to take and send naked pictures of themselves? Okay, Nikki says 15. Whitman says 12. Craig, 11. I think it's more, hopefully. Brett, 14, 16, 12. Okay, so we're getting towards the teenage years. I've got some very bad news. Children as young as 6 are taking and sending naked pictures of themselves. That's why when a lot of parents, when I talk to junior schools, they say, this is more a talk for the high school. And I go, no, because children as young as 6 online to search for pornography from as young as 6. They are sending naked pictures of themselves from as young as 6. And now that's a horrific fact. I spoke to a mum in Canada whose daughter had started sending naked pictures of herself. Now we're talking about Canada. I mean, the most clean-cut country in the world. And she wasn't sending it to someone because they had boyfriend and girlfriend relationship. She was sending naked pictures of herself in exchange for in-game rewards that were being purchased and swapped for naked pictures by pedophiles. Now, we're not talking about games like Call of Duty or PlayStation games. I'm talking about games that your children are playing on their phones games that are aged towards 6 and 9-year-old children. In fact, this game that the child had specifically been lured through is called Animal Jam. Go and check it on your Play Store right now. Animal Jam is aimed between 6 and 9-year-olds, and in this game, you can earn rewards, whatever they are, skins or backgrounds or treasures that you would normally in activities, or you can purchase them through a credit card, which the pedophiles were doing and connecting with their children through chat platforms, which are horrifically risky. And these children were happily doing it. Why? Because they don't have a prefrontal cortex, so they lack the capacity to really gauge right and wrong. My friend's doing it. My friend told me about it, so I can do it. My mum will never know. My dad will never know. This is a world that we are living in now, where there are children in private school who don't just have a credit card for games. There are some children with 2 or 3 credit cards that are being given to them by their parents just for them to do whatever they want. So one is for Roblox, one is for this, one is for that. How can parents be so ignorant, naive, blasé, laissez-faire to really give their children the keys to not just the liquor cabinet? We're talking about the weapons room. They really are giving their children full access to the most dangerous things possible without realizing it. Now, when I say dangerous things possible, I'm talking about platforms that might seem innocent enough. For example, Discord is a very popular app that children use to chat among themselves while they're playing a game, be it Roblox, be it Call of Duty, be it whatever it is. Kids play games, and if there's not an in-game chat facility, they will chat via a platform like Discord. Now, one in the chat box, if your child is on... I'm sorry, I know the wind is blowing. I can try go inside if it'll help. I can try. I'm not even sure where it is. I'll try do this. If the wind gets too bad, then I'll go inside. But I'll carry on while the wind is died down. Let me know if it does pick up and I can go inside. I feel it's picking up. I'm going to move inside, so bear with me 1 second. Okay. Let's just move inside. The joys of not having Wi-Fi in an office yet. All right, so. All right, bear with me 1 second, and I will be going into this room here, and we can carry on. Do we have signal? We have signal. I will close the door. Sorry, just still moving to Spain, so everything's a little bit up in the air. So let's get back to this now because it's important. How many people, by showing one in the chat box, who know if their children are on Discord, or 2, if they don't even know if their child has Discord? So 1, if your child is on Discord, 2, if they are not on Discord, or you don't even know if it is. Now, Discord, if parents don't know, is like I said, it's a chat facility that allow people to communicate. But the problem with this chat facility is it's not monitored. There is no monitoring or checking. And that is a big problem because professionals, and we're talking about predators, pedophiles, people who are scammers, are using Discord to target the most gullible and easily manipulated demographic in the world, and that is children. I'm looking at a whole lot of chat of twos coming through on the chat saying that they don't know if their child has Discord. And that is scary. Now, there's a couple saying they're not on. One they do know. Craig, I like your comment that your daughter plays Roblox and she tells me and promises she does not chat to anyone. I don't want to assume that anybody's child is not completely honest, completely sincere in what they say. Unfortunately, because your kids are still quite young. Now, if your children are still 8 or 9, you probably still have mommy or dad's little angel, because they haven't started to value the risks that they take quite as much as children when they start to hit their teenage years. If your child is still innocent, truly cherish the years, because they are the most valuable years and they will change, unfortunately. Look, there are some parents, and I write about this in my book, some parents who go through life with children who are A-grade children. They don't do a single thing wrong. These are the same people who have single-digit body fats. They're on the one end of the spectrum. The rest of us mortals who have, naughty little buggers for children and have, double-digit body fats, we have a different experience of life. But the reality is, children, when they get to adolescence, are given a greater reward, a greater hormonal reward, dopamine and endorphins, by taking risks than children or adults. So in those teenage years, nature has really played the most awful prank on teenagers. They are, number one, affected by hormones far greater and by lesser amounts of hormones. In fact, it's not just hormones, it's alcohol, substances. Children are impacted and addicted to smaller amounts of anything than children or adults. So it really is a case where nature's gone, I'm going to push you down the ground and kick you as hard as I can for your adolescent years. It seems like all the cards are stacked against them. But the reality is, children do get a bigger risk reward hormonally by taking risks, especially when they're taking risks with their peers, than they would if they're younger or older than teenage years. And I'm going to say this, never assume the thing your child tells you is the truth. And I don't say that because I want to say that your child is not above board, is not truthful, is not good. We all honestly hope that our children are angels. We really, really, really all hope that. A lot of times, to the detriment of the children, we believe without any shadow of a doubt that our children are honest, sincere, and truthful in everything that they do. Now, unfortunately, from personal experience and from interviews with so many people, it's not always the case. And in fact, more often than not, children will lie to protect themselves and hide things from their parents because their parents have stopped being the pivotal core of their identity. As soon as they start to hit adolescence, that pull away from their parents is part of their programming. It does change further down the line when they start to realize through the development of the prefrontal cortex that there's a right and wrong, there's a consequence. But remember, your children, while they're still in the limbic phase, me now. They will make decisions and say things what they do. Sorry, someone started to drill. I really do apologize about this. Give me 1 second. International call. Sorry. So please. I am so sorry about that. My landlord didn't realize I was on this webinar, so forgive me about that. Seems like it's all going pear-shaped. Okay, the thing about, and I've got to dance very carefully about this topic. Parents are starting to assume that their children are 100% honest. And when it comes down to especially relationships with schools have been put into a position where it's gone from a place of parents, especially in private schools, not to see the teachers in schools themselves and the principals of the schools no longer as allies in raising their children, teammates in making sure their children go to school with the best of the future possible. A lot of times, and it's happened more and more, that parents have started to believe their children over the teachers. They've started to assume that their children are angelic and the schools are out to get them. It doesn't happen with all parents, but unfortunately it's ruining the relationship between parents and schools because the children are not being sincere, they're not being honest, and even though proof is being provided, the parents schools with reputational, financial, or legal harm, and the schools have to take a step back and say, well, I'm not going to touch that topic, or I'm not going to do anything. So it's actually ruining the growth of children because too many parents assume that their children are angelic, honest, and sincere, and all that they say, do, and say. But getting back to the topic of the chat systems and roadblocks, a lot of times children will be approached by people who seem to be innocent. Now, yes, Craig, I'm sure you and Uthman have a similar relationship. I think a lot of parents of the younger children will have put rules in place where if something dodgy or some stranger approaches them on a chat system or whatever it might be, they have to come and let you know. But the scammers, catfish artists, pedophiles, and predators on these chat facilities or apps or whatever it is, they know how to manipulate and come across as children. In fact, they are quite possibly the most successful psychological manipulators in the world. And I'm sure that you might have seen a program on TV called Catfishing, but I'll give you a story that will horrify you because it seems like anybody would be bought in. I mean, we've all heard of the TV show The Tinder Swindler. The Tinder Swindler is about people who get swindled by people who are saying there's something and they're not. Now, if adults are being scammed by these people, children are easily being scammed as well. So, there was a 17-year-old boy in the UK. He's the son of a very good friend of mine from when I was in high school. And he was he was actually on Discord, and someone approached him, someone of the opposite sex, someone beautiful, started chatting with him. And it was very, very, very completely platonic, subtle. It was never a hard sell. It was never obvious that this person wasn't who they said they were. This person had a video call. A 17-year-old girl started after a while, after chatting and up, and allowed the boy to start flirting. They had a few video calls, like FaceTime, like we're doing now, in fact. In fact, even the mom of the boy, sort of walked in the room when they were having video talks and hi, greeted the girl at the other end of the video. And over a couple of weeks, this boy was lured into having an emotional connection with this girl. But then, as happens with these catfishing scams, the girl started to release more drama and stories of drama and lure this boy into, down a rabbit hole, if we're going to go into an Alice in Wonderland sort of explanation. And he was really caught in and invested emotionally in this. And the mother also thought it was just a real, honest relationship. Why? Because she'd been on a video call and spoken to this girl as well. But it turned out that it wasn't this 17-year-old girl. It was a catfish scammer who was having such an emotional impact on this 17-year-old boy that he almost committed suicide. I personally not only have spoken to the parents of this boy, but I've spoken to the 18-year-old girl who lives in Cape Town, whose images had been stolen of completely innocent TikTok videos and subtle, harmless information that she shared with people. What pet do you have, or what color do you like? And her information and her images were put into deepfake technology that was so successful that not even the mother of this boy could detect that it wasn't legitimate, wasn't 100% legitimate. And the problem is, this is what happens. This 18-year-old girl, when I met with her at Canal Walk, probably a month and a half ago, I sat down and I said, do you know what your images, what your face had been used in? And she said she had no idea. She knows it had an impact on a 17-year-old boy. I said, your face not only was used in deepfake technology, which is where you can, using advanced computer software, superimpose your face over someone else's, or somebody's face over someone else's, to make it look like that person is someone else. In fact, recently I've seen Vladimir Putin's face put onto a clip from the Mr. Bean movie where he's in an airport and he's pretending he's got a gun. It's really, really advanced technology. These scammers, these catfish scammers, are so good that they make Hollywood look second grade. But I had to tell this 18-year-old girl that her face had not only been used in FaceTime videos, but also superimposed onto a rape video. Her face was on a rape video that was being shared out by these scammers, almost going viral. How do you think she felt? She'd done nothing wrong. She hadn't scammed someone. She'd simply put up a TikTok video. A lot of parents are okay with their children using TikTok, using Instagram, because, and yes, I will share a lot of information, Mad Dog, about how to circumvent this. Yes, in fact, Craig, FaceSwap app is deepfake technology. This girl didn't know what to do. And I'm writing a book at the moment called Saving Teens, which is all of these horrific stories that I've been exposed to since I released my first book, What You Don't Know Can Hurt You. But when it comes down to it, us as parents are using these apps. We are using FaceTime. We are using TikTok. We are using Instagram. But because we are using them and we are not targeted by these scammers, we are not exposed to those risks because we aren't their demographic. Scammers don't come for us quite as often because they know we will see the red flags. Children aren't as lucky. Children are being influenced and coerced and manipulated and bribed from very young to do crazy, stupid things. And I'm going to give you a statistic which will freak you out. 1 in 3 children, 1 in 3 teenagers is sexting. So if your child is the angel, if your child is the one out of their friend group who is innocent, to one of her 2 other closest friends, statistically, is creating and sending child pornography. Now, anybody who is in possession, don't have to send it, who's in possession of an image or a video of an underage person, that's anybody under the age of 18, even if it is themselves, is a criminal because they're in possession of child pornography. And that is terrifying because you often have people in your house, sleepovers, playdates, and it might be they're 12 years old, but remember what I've said, children as young as 6 are sending naked pictures of themselves. So imagine someone comes round to your house or sends your child a naked picture. It happens. 1 in 3 children are doing it. So if your child receives it, remember, often if your child has a device, a smart device, it has been recorded in your name, often on a contract linked to your name, often from a home Wi-Fi in your name. So if a pedophile is approached by the police and someone says, using your Wi-Fi router, using your device recorded in your name, naked pictures of underage children have been sent, all the pedophiles will say, it wasn't me, it might have been my children. And unfortunately, there are parents who've been put in jail because of what their children are doing. Sending sexting. Now, I don't want to drag on too much because I really want to get to the crux of this. There is a risk. The risk is that children have access to devices. Children have access to the internet, which is a beautiful double-edged sword. Never in the history of humanity has there been so much access to free information, but never in the history of humanity has there been more exposure and access to predators and deceit and evil in the history of the world. It's really a horrible balancing act between the good that you can get from it and being able to coach your children and manage it properly. But factor in the limbic system, where it's all about a fear of being rejected and a complete reward system for taking great risks and a desire to create their own identity as far away from their parents as possible. Factor all of these things in together. Why there are so many kids committing crimes, so many kids being blackmailed into doing, into having sex at 14, at 15, even younger, because they're blackmailed because someone has got naked pictures of them. The question I get asked often is, number one, how do we, if our children have already, well, first of all, what is the age that our child should get a phone? And I want to answer that really, really succinctly. I don't think any child should ever be given a phone in the context of it becomes theirs. Semantically, there's a big difference between you are given a phone versus you have access to use one of my phones. Same end result in as far as they've got a device that they have access to and use of, but one is it is theirs, and the other semantic representation is it is yours, and it comes with conditions. Now, I was on an Emma Sadlier talk on Tuesday, and she said that anytime you give your child a smart device to use, not have, but use, it should always be done with a contract between you and that child. So a smart device contract you can actually get off her website should always be the precursor to being given a device. Now, if your child has already got a device that's theirs, there has to be some monitoring in place. Now, I personally use three softwares, but there's so many really good ones out there. Bark is phenomenal. I don't use Bark. I'm using Bosco, and we'll send you a link to this recording, but Bosco is a great way of detecting when certain phrases, certain images, and certain content is received or sent by your child. So, for example, if your child or someone that they know is talking about self-harm, which is so prevalent nowadays, suicide, depression, bullying, or something along those, or anything along those lines, it will flag with their parent's phone, highlighting to you that there's a problem that you need to be mindful of and need to address. So Bosco is the first one. Secondly, because children are on porn sites from as young as 6, I recommend Lighthouse. Now, Lighthouse was actually created in Cape Town, and it is probably the best and most powerful porn blocker that I've ever seen in research. And in fact, every school can get Lighthouse for free. So if your children are taking the devices to use at school and at home, I'd recommend the school gets Lighthouse, and I recommend you get it at home as well, because it does block porn. And the problem with normal porn blockers is they only flag recognized or pre-noted websites. But your children, I mean, look, if your kids may be interested in, for example, Wonder Woman or the Avengers or anything, there will be a porn spoof or parody of a popular movie or hero or action figure. So even though they might be searching Thor's hammer, for example, now I know your kids are all girls, but for example, if you've got a son and they search Thor's hammer, that could easily be linking to a porn site. Now, what Lighthouse does is it automatically blocks before any image comes through because it's linked to a VPN, which is a phenomenally powerful tool. So Lighthouse, Bosco, and then Google Link My Family or Family Link, because that is a very powerful tool that allows you to, number one, have more say over what apps your children use, how much time they can have on their devices, and also it allows you to turn on and turn off automatically their devices. So you can set it so that at a certain time the phone turns on and a certain time the phone turns off. It lets you check out, but it also tracks where your children are, which is very important, because if a child gets abducted or goes somewhere that they say they're going to a friend's house and they end up they're not, you want to know that prior to getting a notification that there's been an abduction. Well, you guys live in South Africa, and that's a very, very scary reality. We hear about it far too often. And using Google Family Link, Bosco, and Lighthouse are three apps that I highly recommend. As for the relationship with your children and smart devices, number one, I don't recommend that you ever give your child a phone. Have them permission to use your phone. Have it so that you have an agreement with them that you can at any time take action or gain access to their device and look what's on it, not so that it's an invasion of privacy. Although, yes, it is, if we're going to be honest. But when you can end up in jail because of something that someone has sent to your child, then it's worthwhile you knowing it, because you can be put on a sex offenders register purely by something that your child has been doing on their phone, because it'll often be linked to your name. And even if your child is on any device or any WhatsApp group, for example, and there is racism, bullying, or hate speech on that WhatsApp group, even if your child has not said it or been involved in any of the interactions, they can still be held liable for those elements in it. Now, a lot of parents think that their children can only be legally charged when they're 18. But the truth of the matter is, you can now be charged legally from 12. It can be proven that your child has broken the law and be charged legally from 12, but definitely from 14. But your child can be charged civilly, a civil charge, from the age of 7. A lot of parents don't realize that. But for example, if your child says something that is claimed to be defamation of character or criminal injuria on a WhatsApp chat, which a lot of kids do have, and it goes to, for example, it's about a teacher, and that teacher sees it, if your child is 7 or up, they're charged in a civil case. And it's happened quite a lot, in fact. Parents don't realize that. But unfortunately, bullying, racism, hate speech, and all of these sexploitation are becoming more real now that our children have access to WhatsApp groups. And it's not just active bullying, which in our case, when we were younger, bullying had shifts. My bullies, when I was in high school, the guys who bullied me, they took a shift between 8 and 3:30. And then I had time off for good behavior. Nowadays, kids are bullied not only by the people in their peer group in their school 24/7, but also people digitally. So people they don't even know are being bullies. And that's why there are kids nowadays committing suicide because of cyberbullying at a rate that will make your head spin. And it's not just that. Our kids aren't being taught enough about their self-worth. They are seeing their self-worth not by what they do or who they are, but how their online interactions are being received. There are children committing suicide. Media posts aren't getting enough likes. So we have to, as parents, start to really have more of an invested interest in developing our children's self-worth, because if we're not investing the time and energy in finding out who our children are, who they're with, what apps they're playing, what they're doing on social media, how happy they really are, not what they're showing you, but how happy they really are. And what they show you is phenomenally different to what they're really feeling. If we're not investing that much time, know that there is a lot more time, energy, effort, and money into luring your children down a dark path than you are in wanting them to stay safe. And that's a horrible claim to make, but unfortunately, it is a statement I have to make because I want your children to be safe, like I know you want to. But children are phenomenally good at deceiving, manipulating, lying. In fact, more so, they make the ANC look like noobs. They look like the government and politicians around the world look like amateurs. But it's not because the hardware is broken. It's because the software is upgrading. And our kids are phenomenally beautiful. Your children are phenomenally beautiful. They are worth protecting. And if that means you have to limit their privacy on online devices, you owe it to them to set the boundaries that they don't have the prefrontal cortex to set themselves. They need you to be the parents. They don't need you to be their friends. Now, there's a new trend in parenting where parents have stopped wanting to be parents, and to try and make sure that their children don't pull away from them too much, they've started to be their buddies and not their parents. They want to be doing TikTok videos with them. They want to be doing the TikTok dances. They want to be connecting with their kids as buddies. They want to be the cool parent. Now you've got this sharenting where parents are now split up and there's a sharenting. We want to always be the good parent. We want to be the cool parent. And that's why there are 12, 13, 14-year-old boys being sent pornography by their fathers. That's why quite recently, last month in fact, a 14-year-old boy went for a sleepover at a friend's house because he was having the party. 14 years old, whole bunch of 14-year-old boys. The dad organized a stripper for these boys to try and be the cool parent. Now, unfortunately, that is seen as grooming, which means it's a criminal offense and that man should be in jail. But because it is happening, it's a thing which we have to be afraid of. Your kids don't want you as their friends. Your kids desperately need you to be parents, to set boundaries, to be uncool, to be the brakes on them careering downhill into a dangerous situation. And yet, your kids are going to hate you for it. Your kids are going to be angry, upset, rebel, be peed off. But for their safety, they need you to do that. And they won't thank you during the adolescence years, but they sure as hell will thank you when they get through it safe. Sean's put here, Bark is great. I also run Gustudio, which also monitors PC, which Bark does not do, controls the apps they can install, etc. It is true. There are phenomenal apps. But I want you to say one thing. When you put on apps or filters or software or whatever it is to monitor what your children are doing, constantly, and I'm talking about at least once every month or once every 2 months, check to see if there is a hack that is available online. Because where I said kids are phenomenally great at manipulating and deceiving, they are even better at finding workarounds and hacks on how to get around these parental guides. So always be making sure that once you put something or 2 or 3 things on the device, you're checking to see if there has been a workaround. In fact, there are some clever things these children can do, such as hidden vaults, where they're actually able to keep things away from these parental guidance in a shared vault, a secret vault. So never assume that your children are playing by the rules. That's why always go and see have a relationship with your children that you have access to the devices, because if you don't, number one, they could be falling victim to predators. Number two, they could be scammed by someone who's even superimposed their face over naked pictures. They might not even have taken naked pictures themselves. It might be deepfake technology where their face is now over a naked picture and they've been blackmailed into having sex or doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And they're hiding that information from you. Why? Because they're terrified of your reaction. And I'm going to end now with quite possibly the most powerful bit of advice that I could give you. So we've gone through putting the right protection things onto your children's devices. I've gone through being a parent, putting boundaries in place, but also there's something which every parent should have in their house. And it's called the GOOJ card, this GOOJ. And it stands for Get Out of Jail. And what this is sit down with your kids and show them a card. It might be something as small as a Cardi's Hallmark card, or it might be just a gold piece of paper, or you might want to make it special like a Willy Wonka golden ticket type card, and let them know that it is in a safe but secure place. That if they ever come to you with that card, it is their get out of jail free card. And the agreement must be between you and them, and it must be stronger than pinky swear, that if they come to you with that card, you cannot get angry, be upset, lose your temper, be negative, be judgmental, display emotions. If they come to you with that card, it is because they are terrified of something that they have done or something that's been done to them. If they come to you with that card, it has to be you being the most caring, supporting, patient, loving, empathetic parent, their rock of caring, loving advice. Now, I know that if any parent sees their kid coming with that card, you're not going to want to be in that room at that time, because it means something really terrifying is happening. So you're going to have to do whatever it takes to bite your tongue, push back any desire for punishment or emotional explosions. But I'm not saying don't punish the child, but don't do it then. You're going to say, well, we're going to talk about the repercussions further down the line, but right now you need my help, you need my love, you need my care, support. Let's talk about what the situation is. Let's find a solution. Let's get you through this safe, so that you have a parent and not a punishment. You don't have judgment, you have safety. So that get out of jail card has to be something that every family brings in, so that your kids know that when the worst thing possible has happened, safety, not their punishment. And that really is wrapping up. I would also like to recommend you integrate a currency in your house. So when someone says to me, how much time should my child be allowed on their devices? I will say, number one, never allow your child to have the device alone in their room, ever, until they hit high school, possibly, but really from 16 onwards, when their prefrontal cortex starts to develop, then allow them to be alone with their devices in their room after a certain time. Even then, have these checks and balances in place. Have a currency where their good actions earn them a currency. In your house, give it your surname. Like in my case, the Hughes dollar or the Hughes pound. And for certain activities, certain great results, they get a certain amount of currency. For certain bad things, they lose a certain amount of currency, and they can exchange those currency for whatever they want, whether it be a one-on-one date with mum, or one-on-one date with dad, or a game they might have been wanting, or 9 times out of 10, in fact, 99 times out of 100, it's time online. You allow them to earn it. Don't just give it to them without. Craig just said here, my 13 2 days ago, happy birthday to your daughter for wow, teenage years are awesome. Kids now expect to be grown up adult, and they've still not even started, but it's an amazing time. So blessings to your daughter's birthday. We bought her a cell phone online, probably getting it tomorrow. I was hesitant, but my wife was pro cell phone. I need that monitoring software. You need to have a contract that your child signs, so that there's an agreement that the phone is, and these are conditions. What I will do is I will actually, because I've got the email address, I sent you guys an email address. I'll also send it to the school as well, so that if you need a copy of the contract that you can use, alter, add to, take away from, but have an agreement in place. It's in writing, so your children know that this phone is purely so that they can do these things. And if they do something that is in the naughty list, the phone is either taken away or they get no use, or things get blocked. But like I say, when it comes down to the monitoring software, Lighthouse, I personally use Bosco, and Google Family Link. They're great. Bark is phenomenal as well. go and make sure you put them on and let your child know that this comes with the conditions and responsibilities. It's a mature thing, but the condition is that you have access to that phone without any hissy fits, temper tantrums, whatever it is, purely because your child might be doing something that is going to put her or you in jail. Okay, so that's all I've got to say. I go into a hell of a lot more detail on other topics such as depression, self-harm, suicide, alcohol use in my book. And I'm just going to quickly click this here and bear with me a second. I'm going to put something on here. Okay. So, yeah. So if you look at the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see there the Abundance Academy. Now, the Abundance Academy is my website. If you do want to go and get a copy of the book, I do recommend it, not because I wrote it, but not as an academic. I wrote it as a parent who wanted to give other parents everything they need to know to have a better relationship with their child or children. There's even a section at the back of the book specifically for the children. Why are parents so full of it? Why is there disconnect? Children also need to know why they're going through such difficult times, why everything is so intense. Nobody seems to know or hear them. So it is something that every single person who's read it has said that it has given them a much deeper connection with their child through a place of empathy and understanding and compassion. The children who've read it have said, wow, okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much. It even gives scripts to use when you find out your child might be self-harming or might be depressed. How do you approach it in a constructive, loving, compassionate, empathetic way, which isn't going to alienate you? 9 times out of 10, parents want to react emotionally. So I would recommend you go get it. So if there's any questions right now, please drop them in the chat box. I know that we're over time, so I want to keep it as short as possible. If there's any questions, please do. Let's go. Our daughter's 11. She does not have a phone. Bless you. We don't intend to get her one yet. The feeling pressure is most of her friends have one. There is a type of bullying called bullying by exclusion, where people are put onto a WhatsApp group, but the person they want to really hurt is excluded. Now, through excluding your children when they start to become teenagers from having access to their social connection, it's almost a form of punishment. So, there's that very fine balancing act. When do we give our children the phone? If all of their friends have it, then get it. If they are pre-teenage years, if they are still in junior school, try to get them a phone that is not a smartphone, a dumb phone. If they're now getting into high school or they start to become teenagers, get them a smartphone with all of the conditions, with the agreement in place, and with the agreement that you will have access to that phone whenever you feel you need to. Don't abuse it, because you still want to build up a level of trust, but just know the older they get, the more into the teenage years risks, and the more they're driven by their. Many people know the prefrontal cortex only stops developing at 25. So our children until 25 are still growing. So that's why first year varsity, they tend to go and become very radical political figures, and they want to start changing the world, even though they haven't quite developed yet into the grumpy old farce that their parents are, me included. So we have to understand that children are going through this process. So remember, if there's any questions you've got, please drop them into the comments line. I just want to see how many people have still got them. Still 57 people. So please, if you've got any questions, if you want a link to where to get the book, www.theabundanceacademy.co.za. So that is something you can put on. I'm just going to see if I can put the settings here. No, it's not that one. No, can't do that. Okay. No, I did try. So Steve Hughes.co.za. No, not that. So theabundanceacademy.co.za. Please feel free to go there. You can buy it in digital format. You can buy it in hardcover. I do know the school has got quite a few books. I don't know how many they've got left, but please go and get a copy. If you've got any questions, drop me a message. You probably all got my email address anyway. My WhatsApp number is available on theabundanceacademy.co.za. I'll WhatsApp gladly. We can do video calls. If your child is going through something which is concerning to you, depression, self-harm, substance abuse, bullying, if they're a bully or the victim of bullying, if you find that they might have been sexting or someone has sent them a naked picture and hope, how you deal with these things is so vitally important for you to maintain and grow your relationship with them. So that is available to you. Please get in touch with me. And I also want to thank everybody for your time. I will send out a link so people can watch this again, but bless you, because you being here today is an investment in your children, and that shows that you love and care for them. And for that, I respect and appreciate you so much. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.